Hello everybody, we are back with CIS Top 20 Controls series. Today, I'll be discussing about CIS Control number 13, which is data protection. Before we start, I should give a little introduction about myself. So, I'm Krity Kharbanda. I'm an information science graduate student at the University of Pittsburgh. I'm specializing in the field of information security. Before joining this master's program, I was working as an associate cybersecurity specialist for a year. So, what's the agenda for today? I'll be discussing the whole control into 6 subparts. But before I start, I need to clear one thing. If you're referring to version 7, then it's numbered 13. The control is numbered 13. But if you're referring version 8 of the document, then the now control has been numbered 3. Let's go ahead. What is data protection? Data protection is the process of safeguarding important information from corruption, compromise, or loss. By protection, it is meant that data resides in the hands of authorized entities, and it's only made available to them when it is needed for a purpose. It's very important that the privacy and the integrity of the data should be maintained at all times. Data protection is a broad umbrella, which includes traditional data protection techniques like taking backups, archiving the data, storing it in different drives. Then comes data security. It calls for applying different algorithms for encryption, loss prevention, and threat monitoring. And in the last is the data privacy. Data privacy calls for being compliant with the policies, best practices, data governance rules, and regulations. What is the criticality of this rule? Data has become so vast that organizations cannot contain it in the borders. It cannot be contained in enterprises' borders. It is now on the cloud, on portable user end devices, and can be easily accessible from anywhere around the world. In addition to sensitive data, an enterprise holds a lot of different kind of data like finances, customer data, and there are numerous international regulations for protection of all that personal data. Data privacy has become increasingly important, and enterprises are learning that privacy is not just applying the right kind of encryption, but it is also using the appropriate management tool to handle the data. It is very important to manage the entire life cycle of data appropriately. These rules can be complicated for multinational enterprises of any size. However, there are fundamentals that can apply to all. Let's talk about the implementation groups and security functions. Firstly, I'll be defining what the CIS defines as the 3 implementation groups. So implementation group 1 is an organization with limited resources and cybersecurity expertise available to implement subcontrols. Implementation group 2 is an organization with moderate resources and cybersecurity expertise to implement subcontrol. And implementation group 3 is a mature organization with significant resources and cybersecurity expertise to allocate to subcontrols. Implementation groups for this control are selected based on the sensitivity of the data to be protected. There are 9 subcontrols. I will be discussing a few of them with you all today. Let's start with 13.1. Before I start with the subcontrols, I think I should give a brief about what security functions are. Security functions are of 3 types: identify, protect, detect. Identify includes identifying the sensitive information and labeling it and classifying it. Protect means applying different algorithms to protect that sensitive information. And lastly, detect. Detect stands for detecting the loopholes and detecting if there's a breach that has happened. or if any unauthorized activity or entity has the access to the sensitive data. So let's start. 13.1. The control is about maintaining an inventory of sensitive information. All three implementation groups comply with this subcontrol. The next is 13.2. 13.2 talks about access. Remove sensitive data or systems not regularly accessed by organization. All three implementation groups comply with this 13.2. Now, if we talk about 13.4, 13.4 is only allow access to authorized cloud storage or email providers. Here, it's like an extended part of 13.2 if you analyze it. So if we are moving, so 13.2 you can say is basic, is a more generalized access administrative rule, and 13.4 is the high level kind of a rule for the same thing, for the access control. So only implementation group 2 and 3 comply with this one. Implementation group 1 is the group which just have limited amount of sensitive data, a limited amount of cybersecurity expertise to handle that sensitive data. So it does not comply with the 13.4 subcontrol. Moving ahead to control number 13.5, I should discuss. 13.5 is to monitor and detect any unauthorized use of encryption. Only implementation group 2 complies with this one. And encrypting data 13.9, which says encrypting data on USB storage devices. This rule is also just complying, the implementation group 2 complies with this rule. Moving ahead to the procedure and the tools. What's the procedure of implementing data protection control? It's very simple. It's just the 3 W's. What, where, and who. What is the sensitive information? Where is the sensitive information? And who needs the access to that sensitive information? If we have answer to these 3 W's, we're done with it. We have the whole overview of the architecture that we need. It's very important to classify the data, label the data like business confidential, public, sensitive, and then mapping the data based on the level of sensitivity. Access of the data should be based on job requirements and need-to-know basis. Detailed logging should be turned on for servers in order to track access and allow security personnel to examine incidents in which data was improperly accessed. Different compliance standards and frameworks should be referred to classify data and to stay aligned with the policies. This whole ER diagram is basically explaining what we just discussed in the procedure. First, if you see the middle line is all about your system, how you're classifying the data, who has the access to the data, who's the examiner. The right is the computer systems. And on the left, it is the alert and reporting system. Moving ahead to the risks associated with this control. When we are talking about the risks associated with this control, we are basically going back to the criticality of this control. They are very much interrelated. As I mentioned while explaining the criticality, that today the data is no more stored in enterprises' border. It's all there on the cloud. It's all there on the internet. Attackers can gain access to sensitive data stored on same servers with same level of access as far as less important data. So if we do not classify the data, we do not segregate the sensitive information and the less sensitive data, then our data can be easily accessed by the attackers out there. There could be loopholes if we do not align with relevant compliances. If data is compromised, it's not just the organization who suffers, everybody suffers. Supposedly today, I am Google Pay customer. Customer, you can say, I am a Google Pay user. I use Google Pay to make transactions and everything. My bank accounts are linked to Google Pay, and Google Pay suffers a data breach. When Google Pay suffers a data breach, all the data that's there is going to be leaked. My account, which was linked to my Google Pay account, will also be leaked. My bank account details are leaked. They're out there on the internet. Anybody can access those details. So is my account safe anymore? No. Was I related to Google Pay when the breach happened? No. I was not related directly, but yes, I was related indirectly because I'm using the service provided by them. So if the company suffers, I suffer. Further, we'll be discussing about the costs. The cost. What is the cost of implementing the CIS data protection control? Organizations either need a strong working team or a strong tool which can help them to stay compliant with it. And there are a lot of open source on enterprise tools available that can help an organization stay compliant with the data protection, CIS data protection control. There's an advantage of enterprise tools over open source tools. They cover everything that is there in the umbrella of data protection. There are different tools out there like OneTrust, data encryption, IBM Security Guardian, Data Grail. They do everything for you. You just need to get it set up in your organization. But yes, open source tools are free and they can be customized based on your usage. But on the other hand, there's no one open source tool that can cover everything that's under the data protection umbrella. You need different tools for encryption, privacy, data security. You need to implement different rules, different tools, and for that you need a strong team. Both kinds of tools available have their cost. It just depends on the organization, what's the budget and what's the need and what's the requirement. Based on that, what suits them the best. So this was all. This was the data protection control of CIS in brief. I hope this session was informative. You could understand what I was trying to explain, and yeah, I hope you had a great time. Thank you.